Texan Live. And joining me over here to my right, we're always switching chairs here, so I'm like, sometimes I say left, sometimes I say right. But over here joining me to my right, she's the AP to my AP. It's AP!
Yes.
Ashley Pickle.
That is correctly said. I had to think about that as well. Howdy, friends. I'm used to seeing all you dorks at noon.
I know. I was going to say, like, this is your normal time slot to be on the airways of Dave Campbell's Texas Football.
But I'm not used to sitting in this room, in this chair,
You're
with
used
you.
To being over there.
In the noon slot.
And then Gregory Tepper's over there.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
It is. My week has been very thrown off just in general because I've been down at our Texan Live offices in Houston for the past 2 days. But this is going to take some time getting used to because in my brain right now, it is 2 o'clock on a Thursday.
Oh, I know. I thought about that too.
All actuality, it is noon on a Wednesday, which is great for a lot of different reasons, which we'll talk about. But also, the best thing about WTF was meant that, like, we're basically done for the day, and then it's Friday, which is either game day or Friday. So, like, either one of those are great options. I'm not saying that I don't love it, but it's going to take some time getting used to.
Right. Well, usually at this point, I would be getting ready for the Republic of Football because we used to go live on Wednesdays at 2 p.m., our college football podcast. If you're not familiar, check that out. Noon on Tuesdays. I'm still getting used to that.
We're still figuring this out.
But yeah, here we are. We're women talking football. If you aren't familiar with us, we are women that love talking football.
It's almost like it was accurately named.
Yeah, it's funny like that, right? WTF. Funny. You know what that stands for. But yeah, we love talking the X's and O's of football. We love getting deep into the sport. We love talking about high school football and college football. That's what we love to do, and that's primarily what we do on this show. But we also love to spread awareness about women's sports, which is what we're going to do today. We love bringing light into the world of women's sports because, as you guys know, it's becoming so much more popular than it has been in the past, and we're so pumped about that. We can hope that we can be sort of a reason for that a little bit. So on today's show, I'll go ahead and by the way, this is episode 69. Nice.
Oh, nice.
Of WTF.
Whew, we're on a heater. Welcome in.
A heater. Welcome in. Yeah, what better way to start off this new programming
than with a nice 69th episode of WTF. I mean, we are... Let that soak in.
Oh, please. Let's cut this after this. After the show. That needs to be cut and put on social media. But on today's show, we're going to talk a little bit more about our new programming slate. Don't worry, no shows are going away. We're still going to have the regular slate of 3 shows, but the format is going to look a little bit differently. The scheduling is going to look a little bit differently, so we'll get into that. We're going to update you on some headlines around the women's sports world that maybe you haven't heard of or want to know a little bit more about. And then in the back half of the show, it's Crootin. It's Crootin. It's not going away. Well, maybe it is. But not for this week. You're still going to get your regular dose of Wednesday Crootin with none other than the director of recruiting at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Greg Powers. I sat down with him yesterday, and we talked a little bit about Texas Longhorns recruiting. So I hope that you will stay for that in the back half of the show. But first, let's talk a little bit more about this programming. Now, if you tuned into TFT on Monday or ROF yesterday, you heard Tepper talk a little bit about this new scheduling format that we're going to be doing. So I think Tepper put it in a really good way. He said, yes, we love doing Texas football today every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his baby. That's your baby. Mm-hmm. You know, you guys love Texas football today. But he was like, we have so many more people on this staff now.
Yeah.
We're growing. We want to share this noon slot, these noon airways for our other talent and our other shows that have become popular as well. So very kind of him to say that. I think that we were all in agreement that that's probably the best way to go about this, at least as of right now. So just right now, what we're doing is on Mondays, you're still going to have Texas football today. Mm-hmm. Tuesdays at noon is the Republic of Football, our college football podcast featuring Ishmael Johnson, our host, Carter Yates, our college football insider, and then me. I will be producing that show. Wednesdays, hey, it's Women Talking Football with Ashley Pickle, Mallory Hartley, and VNA Moreno, our beautiful producer over there. And then Thursdays, we're going back to Texas Football Today. So you'll still have your regular Texas Football Today stuff on Thursday with Ashley Pickle and Greg Tepper. And then Fridays is TBD.
Yeah,
as of right
I
now.
think for the off season, if you will, for the rest of the summer, I think we're going to just be dark on Fridays. But heading into the season, as we started last year, Texas Football Tonight is our big NFL Red Zone type of show where we dive into all of the games that we have on TexanLive.com. That show is free. All of our games are subscriber based, so we hope that you'll take the chips and salsa and then go get the whole stinking enchilada after that. But I think because I haven't been here to talk about the new show programming or anything like that, but you're 100% right in the fact that, I mean, when Tepper and Max started Texas Football Today in 2015, that was the craziest new venture that the Dave Campbell's brand had gone on up to that point.
This brand had never been anything but just print media.
Yeah.
Right? It's never been, the video aspect of the media was not there.
No.
Right? And so, yeah, you're right. When Max Thompson came in and Greg Tepper, they created Texas Football Today. I almost said Texas Football Tonight because we were talking about it, but Texas Football Today. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this was a brand new venture for our company.
Right. And then obviously in 2019, I ended up taking over for Max. Actually now have surpassed the number of episodes that Max did, probably by over 100 or so at this point, which is just wild to think about. I mean, I've been doing it every day for the past 5 years, but yeah, our staff has grown so much. There's so much content out there to be delivered through so many different devices, that our biggest hope for this is for y'all to be able to come to TexasFootball.com, to YouTube, to Facebook every single day at noon and be guaranteed programming.
Yes.
There are a lot of times we had to take off TFT because we're getting pulled in 17 different directions. There's so much stuff going. And it's funny to think about too, like when I first got hired, if I could not be there for a day, we did not have a show because there was not a single other person. Tepper every now and then could turn it on and run the programming, or even like Mailbag last year, he did a couple by himself. But it was like when I first started, if I wasn't here, we didn't have a show because there was not a single other person that knew how to run the computer.
Right.
And old girl, now new girl, and I just thought it was so cool when you got here and we were able to train you up on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can continue to give consistency to our viewers. That's huge because we want y'all to expect to know that on Wednesdays you can come in and there's always going to be a WTF. On Mondays you can come in, there's always going to be TFT. And now we have VNA who can also run the system. So we've got so many different hands. It's like, oh yeah, let's spread the wealth and get people in there. But I also hope that if you're new to this show specifically, it's different. Obviously, we're kind of the more relaxed show. We're not necessarily up at the desk. It's just 2-3 women talking football. But I hope that those of you who've watched TFT forever understand the wealth of knowledge that we have on this show about the actual X's and O's of the game. And if you're new here and have only ever seen TFT in the noon slot, I hope you'll stick around. Like she said, today we're not going to talk a whole lot of X's and O's. It's June 11th.
Yeah.
But when we get into the football, man, we dive deep into it. If you're looking for Texas high school football content, we can provide that to you. So I hope that you'll give us a shot and stick around because I think we're pretty fun to listen to.
Yeah, some may
Most
disagree.
people don't. Most people in our office
disagree about that, but I think we're personally fun to listen to. Maybe
the
a little
only-
bias here,
We're
but
the only two people in the studio, so whose else's opinion really matters?
no one's going to barge in here and tell us no.
No, yeah.
Well, they might, but they're not going to. They'd have to yank us by the
I'm
shirt.
not leaving.
We're not leaving. But yeah, to continue that too, we also love having female guests on our show. I mean, we love having female sports reporters and sports directors around the state of Texas give their insight on different areas of high school football that they cover strictly. We love having female coaches on. We love having coaches' wives on. So
that's
if you're
where the real
listening
dirt
to
is.
this, oh yeah, we get some dirt on their husbands in there. It's so much fun. But yeah, if you know anybody that would be perfect for this show, let us know. We're always looking for people to hop on and to grow our network a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of what we're about. And we hope that you stick with us and we'll tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. So
12.
Oh no, I did it. 12 p.m.
Take a drink.
I know, seriously. How
There's
many
there's
times
the
am I
new
gonna say
drinking
that?
game for WTF.
I
If
know.
you're looking for a nice little lunch cocktail,
I
just
know.
let us know when you
Well, and
how many times we mess up this programming schedule.
Well, and it's crazy too that we're starting this today because I sent you this last night, but literally 3 years ago today, back in 2021 is when you and I did a full week of Texas football today. You hosted and I produced it. Tepper was out on vacation and you said, hey, why don't we just try this and see what happens? And we produced a full week of Texas football today. And that was the very first time that an all-female led show had ever been on the airways of Dave Campbell's Texas football.
Yeah, it was crazy. The photos are cool, and remembering back to the pride that we had in that week, because we were just going to cancel shows like you normally do.
Right.
Tepper's not here, just cancel the show.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait a minute, I think we can do this. Like, let's give it a shot. And then that's kind of what propelled us into convincing the powers that be that WTF was the right idea. And now here we are in episode number 69, still trying to prove to them that it's a good idea.
Episode 69 of WTF, man.
But yeah,
That's
3 years
so
ago,
good.
we looked like babies in
Oh, we
those
did.
photos too. We should have pulled them up. Maybe next episode we'll pull them up so everybody can see. But man, we looked like children.
Yeah, and you got us these cool sweatshirts that say women in sports, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And we were matching, and man, yeah, we look like babies, but how far we've come. I remember watching that back and going just watching you host that show. I was like, that seems very hard. Like, I don't know if I could do that. And here I am.
And here we are.
hosting a show called our own show, actually. How far we've come. But yeah, we're super excited for this new programming schedule, and we hope that you like us enough to stick around every Wednesday at 12 p.m.
Aha.
I got it that time. All right, shall we get into a couple of headlines here? We shall. Women's sports headlines. Let's start off with something that you sent me this morning. Sports Business Journal. Very familiar. Why are you familiar with Sports Business Journal?
I have been in their good graces before.
Have you? How?
Yes.
I'm curious. For these for the first time listeners here.
I was named to the Sports Business Journal's 30 under 30 list in 2022. So
And where was the ceremony?
New York City. Very proud of that.
That's awesome. That's really
appreciate
cool.
SBJ. They do fantastic work.
They do fantastic work. So you have their notifications on.
Yes.
Twitter popped up all the time. And you sent me an article this morning. They had an innovation summit, leadership summit or something in Chicago recently, all about how women's sports are becoming vastly more popular during this time, which is very, very exciting. And they did so by talking about a couple of major companies that have already put so much investment into women's sports and equity in general. And one of the things that stood out to me the most was Ally Financial. They have really put almost all of their resources into making women's sports known, you know, like their promotion of women's sports, you know, through media. And one of the things I thought was really cool was they had a campaign started back in May of 2022, I believe, that they said they were going to invest as much money into men's sports as they do women's sports, which is really cool to me, I think. In turn, you know, they ended up doing that. And then they also went on to challenge Disney Channel and ESPN to do the same kind of, to invest more into women's sports. And now it comes out that Verizon, a big company, they're also interested in investing in women's sports and the promotion of women's sports across the nation. I don't think they're there yet.
Right.
But there is definitely interest. They want to be full in on this, which is super exciting.
Which I thought was very interesting when the representatives from Verizon had said, hey, look, we want to do this.
Yes.
But they made it incredibly clear that the reason that they haven't made that large financial investment in the same way that Allied Financial has was because, and I quote, we cannot half-ass this when we do it.
Right.
Which was such an interesting way to take a look at that, because basically what they were saying was almost right now investing in female sports, women's sports seems like the cool thing to do. Like it kind of makes you one of those companies that it's like, oh,
hey,
look,
like, you know, we're accepting of everybody, you know, right? That kind of thing.
And it almost seems like a PR ploy for yourself, and you're doing it for those reasons rather than actually trying to help build up the economy of women's sports, which includes not only the financial investment, but mainly, like you were saying, the promotion of it, which is where the lack of financial equity is right now in women's sports, is because of the lack of promotion for it. But I just thought it was very interesting because they were like, so many people use it and do it because it's like, oh, the cool thing to do, and they throw a couple bucks at them, and then it's like, look, we're big supporters of the WNBA or of women's soccer or of this or that. They were like, no, if we're gonna do this, we want the whole hog. We're gonna go in and do it the right way to actually make a difference in the sport and continue to grow the sport, rather than doing it to say, we did it.
Right, exactly. And they've already made so many strides toward that. So one of the things I found interesting in the article about iLife Financial is that they bought in to the National Women's Soccer League's national championship. And they worked with CBS to up that game into the prime time spot. And that was the first time that had ever happened. And proof of concept here, that was the most watched match in the history of the league. So it's working.
Yeah.
You know, if you just invest in women's sports, it's working,
Yep.
you know, and all of this talk about Caitlin Clark, you know, I think that has definitely added to this a lot, but it's not just Caitlin Clark. I mean, we were talking about the softball, the College World Series for softball before this, and how popular that was. Right. I mean, we know that Oklahoma is probably the dominant team in
No, they are.
in college softball,
Patty
right?
Gasso is Jesus reincarnated as a softball coach.
Correct. But I did see something that this was a very well-viewed program, very well-viewed sports. So it is helping. Like, there are people out there, there are big companies like Verizon and Ally Financial and Disney that are willing to invest in women's sports. And I think it's working. It's really exciting. I mean, go back to March Madness this year for women's sports. I mean, that was one of the most viewed programs in the history of college basketball for women.
Well, and I think that that's the biggest thing too, is that what all of this has shown to me over the past couple of years with the emergence of women's sports, with the especially where from college basketball, now all of those players transferring over to the WNBA.
Right.
The thing there is that people like competition. It does not matter what the competition is. It does not matter who is playing the competition. I think it's that college softball is an interesting sample size to look at because Oklahoma has been so dominant for so many years. This year alone was one of the worst teams that they've had in the past few years, and they still won.
Right.
So the viewership number on that is not near as good as the basketball national championships were the past 2 years, because it was genuinely getting to the point where, yes, superstars help that, but then two, it is competitive, and just the financial backing of these companies that needs to be there is because then they can promote it and say, no, look at this competition, because I don't care who you are. If the competition is good, the interest will follow.
Right.
Holly Rowe always tweets it out, build it and they will come. And that's exactly what it is. It's just that the competition has been good. The competition, in my mind, is getting even better, which is helpful. But if you have the financial backing to be able to promote that competition, people will absolutely watch it, because fundamentally sports fans we're all built the same. All we want is a good show. Right. You know, you give us a good show and we're going to watch it.
Right. Well, and I think this comes at a really good time too. The fact that women's sports is really, the viewership is at an all-time high, because you know what's happening this summer in July is the Summer Olympics,
which rock. Big Olympics fans.
Are you more of a summer or winter Olympics gal?
I like summer better.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. And that's for one reason, and I'm about to talk about that one reason. So I think we can argue here maybe a little bit, but I think that the most popular sport in the Summer Olympics is gymnastics. Yeah. Women's, I should clarify, women's gymnastics.
I agree.
I think you could probably argue men's basketball a little bit. It kind of just depends on probably who's playing on the team at that time.
Swimming. I think is very popular. But again, a lot of that has to do with the stardom.
Correct.
Michael Phelps, Katie
Ledecky. Correct.
When you go to gymnastics has always been popular. But when did it boom? When Simone Biles got in there.
Right. Well, and I also think too that sport's just very different than like all the other sports. I think it's just an interesting sport in general. But also, yes, when Simone Biles started getting all these media deals and all of the eyes of the nation were on her, exactly, it started to boom. So that kind of just proves my point there that build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, because you look at we talked about this a little bit too, but you look at the the basketball team just got announced for the Olympics. And there has been so much debate going on about whether or not Caitlin Clark should have been left off or should not have been left off. And I think that I am totally willing to have that debate. That's not the point that I'm getting at. The point that I'm getting at is this is a stark reminder that there are so many good WNBA players that are represented on that list that you've almost forgot about, because all that you've heard about has been Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, no. Let's go back and take a look at Kelsey Plum and that she's still destroying people.
Brianna Stewart.
Brianna Stewart. Let's look at Brittany Griner. All of them. And it was almost refreshing to me in the fact of going, man, there's still some really good talent in the WNBA.
Yes.
Not to mention half of them have children.
I know.
Mama's just going to go hoop for a second and go win a gold medal. Like, it's just, it is a very good time for it to be doing that. But I think it was also a good reminder of not just the new emergence of this, but that those are the women that have been battling against this for so long. And
they're finally seeing.
They deserve the respect.
They're finally seeing the respect for it, for building it. Yes, correct. Very correct on that. And not to mention, it's during the WNBA season, which is always just crazy to me. You know, like they're not only taking time off from their kids, but they're also taking time off from their actual full-time job, which is playing in the WNBA. So it's very respectable. Excited to watch that. Well, finally, let's go ahead and end on a fun little topic. There was a new sports bar that was opened up in Long Beach, California this week. An all-women's sports bar. So it's called Watch Me, which is, I think, really interesting here. The name is in reference to how women athletes often have to prove themselves by showing doubters what they can do, which I think is really, really cool. Two women are the ones that started this bar in California, and they're showing 95% women's sports.
That's awesome.
And only 5% men's sports. So, of course, they're going to still show the Dodgers. They're going to still show Lakers games.
Oh, yeah, the locals.
Right. And you brought up a good point earlier, is that there just are more men professional sports than women's professional sports.
So there are points in the year where there's not as much content, at least from a daily perspective, to be able to entice people to come into a sports bar and the TVs are turned off.
Correct.
You know, like.
Right. So I thought that was really cool. That's the first bar like it in the entire state. Now there's a couple of others that have been popping up around the United States. There's one in Oregon that you had mentioned called the Sports Bra, which is I think we need to take a trip up to Oregon just so we can go.
For research purposes, for science.
No, this is a work trip.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, for science.
Oh, right. Yes. And then we're going to come back and then we're going to open up our own.
See, that's okay. Yes, because that's what I was going to say. I was like, WTF is what started off as a podcast is absolutely, Ben and Skin did that from their time on The Fan. And then now they have Rollertown Brewing. Like, we're thinking about things, people. Innovation.
I love when we just go off on topics like this. We do this a lot. If you're new here to Women Talking Football, we love to produce on the fly. We're both producer minded because I'm the associate producer. She's the executive producer. So we're always just thinking about things and producing on the fly. So when stuff like this happens, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It gets our juices flowing.
Currently associate producer and executive producer, but future bar owners. V&A, are you in on this? Are we opening up a bar?
I'm all for it. I will writing everything down right now.
Okay. That's why we keep her around.
Yeah, that's why we pay her the big bucks.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
WTF bar coming soon, following the 69th episode.
It was created. The idea was born on the 69th episode of WTF.
What if it's like also a bar and coffee? Maybe we could throw some coffee.
I like that. A coffee wine bar.
I do. Yeah, I am a big fan of that.
Coffee, wine, and women's sports bar. Yep. That's
Wake
it.
up
There we go.
and stay all day.
Yep.
That's it right there.
This is it, guys.
Well, guys, on that note, there's your news and headlines in women's sports in today's world. So yeah, that was. We are Women Talking Football. We're here every Wednesday at noon talking football and all things women's sports. This is episode 69.
Nice
of WTF, and we're so glad you're here if this is your first time tuning in. Up next, don't worry, guys. For all you TFT viewers, listeners coming in here at noon expecting TFT, we'll still have you covered today with Crootin. I knew you were expecting the lovely Greg Powers.
And Crootin! That's the first time I've ever gotten to do that.
That was really good.
Love you, Griv.
Love you, Grev. But I sat down with Greg Powers yesterday, and we talked all things Texas Longhorns recruiting, class of 2025, even class of 2026. So we hope you will stick around for that. But before we get to that, let's hear a word from our sponsors.
I feel like bustin' loose, bustin' loose. Come on, get on up. Oh yeah, get on up. Bustin' loose when you wanna sing. Bustin' loose, baby, do your thing. Talking about bustin' loose, yeah.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, even at home. We provide compassionate, caring support, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here.
Wing is the largest residential drone delivery provider in the world, delivering to your home in less than 30 minutes. Order using an app just like other popular delivery services, and Wing's automated drone takes care of the rest. It's fast, safe, and sustainable, and it's now delivering to parts of Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. You can learn more at wing.com/TexasFootball. Again, that's wing.com/TexasFootball.
Mallory Hartley here with Dave Campbell's Texas Football, sitting in the cool zone.
Yeah.
The Crootin collab.
The Crootin
cool
corner.
zone with the director of recruiting at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Greg Powers. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. This has kind of become our new thing, our recruiting notebooks.
And it's Crootin season.
And it's Crootin
we're,
season.
in
You
the
know
middle
that.
of it, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, you can tell from Michael Terry behind us that I think we're going to be talking about the University of Texas, the Texas Longhorns today. So let's take a look back to last year, right? The class of 2024. I think it's safe to say that they pretty much cleaned up, especially in the state of Texas, right? Colin Simmons from Duncanville, Kobe Black from Waco Connolly. On a scale from 1 to 10, or maybe from A to B, A to C, A to E, whatever, what would you rank that class of 2024 for Texas Longhorns?
Well, I'll give them an A+. I think that they did a tremendous job building off the success they had during last season's run to the college football playoffs. And right now, I think if you're a Texas fan, this is like the prime time to be a Texas Longhorns fan, because not only are they moving to the SEC, which brings like a whole new dynamic to the schedule and the football season in general. By the way, they get to move to the SEC with their bitter rival Oklahoma.
Right down the road.
So they get to keep that game.
Or A&M, yeah.
Yeah, they get to keep that game on the schedule, plus pick up the A&M game. So, like, this is the time to be a Texas Longhorns fan. And in recruiting, Texas, this will be my 20th season. 2024 will be my 20th season covering Texas high school football and recruiting. And I can't, like, pinpoint a certain time in that history or like, oh, well, Texas is really struggling in recruiting. Texas doesn't struggle in recruiting, but I will say that I feel like they've taken a step forward in recruiting because they're starting to assemble the type of talent on the field that are going to be able to compete week in and week out with Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, et cetera. I think they're firmly in the national championship picture. And when it comes to recruiting, they have a whole lot to offer moving to the SEC, and they're very competitive in the NIL space.
Right. Well, you've already seen, these high-power transfers like Isaiah Bond coming from Alabama, from Texas. So, yeah, they're absolutely being put on the map. So let's talk about it. The class of 2025, you've got a couple of really good ones, right, that have already committed, like Lance Jackson from Pleasant Grove. And then you've also got Ricky Stewart from Chapel Hill, was committed to SMU and then flipped to Texas a couple weeks ago. Who are some of those standout prospects that you think Texas fans should be keeping their eye on that maybe have already committed or might be flirting with the idea of the Longhorns a little bit?
Well, I really love Lance Jackson. He's the number 10 player in the DCTF rankings. He's the number 1 defensive end. His brother Landon Jackson is at Arkansas. He's going to be an NFL draft pick in next year's NFL draft, and I think that Lance Jackson has an even higher ceiling than Landon does. They were very similarly rated coming out of Texas high school football, but I think Lance, being the younger brother, has played with a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder, and actually watching his brother go through the recruiting process, I think that his game is a little bit more refined as he enters college. I think he's a little bit more ready from day one to compete, where Landon, took some, he committed to LSU, transferred to Arkansas, great player now, but he took, a slower path towards stardom in college football. And I think Lance is going to be a little bit more college ready. And one thing that Coach Gibson there at Texarkana Pleasant Grove, by the way, shout out to all the coaches over there at PG who do a great job of keeping us plugged in here at Dave Campbell's, not only in recruiting, but in Texas high school football as well. They love his work ethic. He's a guy who laces up his work boots every day, comes to work, and works hard in the weight room, in the classroom, and is a team leader. And I've had plenty of opportunity to speak with Jackson, and I can say he's very intelligent as well, and I think that will help his transition to the college game. You mentioned Ricky Stewart. I think that's a big commitment as well, but Texas has done a pretty good job of recruiting out of state. And as a matter of fact, they went out of state to get their quarterback, KJ Lacey, who had some pretty good offers. He's a 4-star on the 24/7 Sports composite, and I think that he is possibly going to come into that quarterback room and offer something different, because they had Arch Manning 2 classes ago, a guy that we saw have his breakout moment in this year's spring game, and everybody's really excited about Arch Manning. But behind Arch, who we consider as he's kind of a dual threat. Behind Arch is you have a traditional pocket quarterback in Trey Owens, and he is a very competitive team leader type in his own right, with a strong arm, tall quarterback, 6'4", 6'5", and then you have a more athletic kid in KJ Lacey, who I think will be able to balance out that quarterback room. So it's a very interesting QB room there at Texas, especially factoring in that all 3 of those players will be pretty young heading into the 2025 season when they're all there on roster.
Well, and speaking of some of those big prospects that you just said that committed from out of state, Texas entering the SEC. I think that does a lot for them in terms of recruiting out of state, being able to pull these players from Florida more than they did, I think, in the Big 12. Would you happen to agree?
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think that they're one of those national brands, right? Like Texas has a national brand, and any recruit, no matter where they're based, when they get an offer from Texas, that's going to be like an eye-opening offer for them. It's going to be something that you're going to have to consider. And I think maybe we'll dive into maybe the uncommitted recruits, or maybe some guys to keep an eye on coming up over the next couple weeks. But I want to take a look at a national recruit that kind of helps explain this, and it's a wide receiver named Jamie French. Jamie French is one of the top recruits in the entire country, and I don't know that Texas was one of his top schools when he was maybe committed to a Power 4 school at one point and decommitted, came back on the market. Ohio State, I know, is in the thick of the middle of this race, and a lot of other top-tier programs as well. But Texas has made up a lot of ground and have secured an official visit from Jamie French, despite the fact that they have a plethora of top-tier wide receiver prospects in their own backyard in Texas and nationally who are looking at them. But that's just like one recruit. Like, this top-tier recruit has to check out Austin before he makes his decision to see what it's about.
Okay, enough out-of-state talk. Let's talk about in-state. Let's talk about your rankings, actually, because really, that's what matters, right? Is the Greg Powers stamp of approval,
Well,
or
my
your
stamp
rankings.
of approval is never going to be cooler than the Texas official visit photos from this.
Oh, these graphics rock,
they were
too.
awesome, weren't
Oh,
they?
my gosh, they were so cool. And the Lamborghinis, that kind of rocks.
Everybody,
I'm not going to
people
lie.
notice that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that puts them more on the map, like you said, the national map, I think. So let's talk about your rankings for a second. Do you think it's a fair statement to say that the top 10, maybe even the top 15, guys like DeCorian Moore, Kalik Lockett, Michael Terry, do they all have an interest, do you think? Most of them, we'll say most of them in Texas. Do you think Texas is in the running for most of these top guys in the state of Texas?
Definitely, and there's a couple of recruits who I feel are really important within that top 10, top 15. Obviously, DeCorian Moore is like the number 1 player, right? He's the number 1 player in the state. one of the best pass catchers that I've ever covered in my 20 years of experience. I love his competitive nature. He'll be taking an official visit to Texas this upcoming weekend, so that'll be like a huge visit to watch. He's already visited Ohio State and LSU. We'll see Texas and Oregon before he makes his decision on where he's going to play his college ball. So that's like the marquee name, right? Everybody wants Decorian Moore, and he's an elite level talent. But outside of that, I think two very important recruits are Michael Fasusi and Ty Haywood, offensive linemen, because Texas is going to have to hit the reset button on the offensive line heading into the 2025 season. And they've shown that they can develop talent and get it to the NFL.
Right.
More so on the defensive front, I think, last year. But Kelvin Banks is going to be a top NFL draft pick, and they're going to lose some experience off that offensive line. And what better way to replace it than a couple of top 5 rated Texas high school football offensive linemen, one from Louisville High School and one from Denton Ryan, who are
right down the road from us, really.
But those two schools I think of, Denton Ryan and Louisville, is like blue blood high school programs in Texas high school football who don't only produce top talent, they produce top talent who is successful in college, and I think that's key. And I love both of those guys. It's hard to separate them in my mind as like which one's better. I've flip-flopped back and forth between Fasusi and Haywood a couple of times already. Fasusi kind of reminds me of more of a Kenyon Green type player. You know,
you've mentioned that before,
and he went on to the NFL.
Rising cover boy.
Yeah, definitely. DCTF Rising Magazine cover boy. I think that he could play anywhere up front. And Ty Haywood I really like because I feel like when you're looking at left tackle projections, he has a chance to be a true left tackle. And those guys could definitely play and star on the same offensive line if they so happen to go to the same college.
Right, and I think that Texas likes that kind of versatility in these players. I mean, for example, Michael Terry, right? He could potentially be labeled as an athlete, right, instead of just a wide receiver.
We have him rated as an athlete.
Right, correct. I think that they like those type of players. But yeah, to your point, let's go ahead and look ahead. Class of 2026, right? You've already got a couple of interests. So, for example, you rated him as a 4-star. It's Temple defensive lineman Jamarian Carlton. Hasn't committed or anything yet, but he's flirting a little bit with the Texas Longhorns. Give me a couple of names from the class of 2026 do you think that Texas Longhorn fans should keep their eye out for?
Well, they already have a commitment from running back Racing Guillory. I think that is a name to know for sure if you don't already know that name. Some people didn't get to watch him play in the last season because when Alito made it to the state championship game, he was out with an injury. But I have to say that next year's class is one of the best running back classes that I can remember covering. And a name that I really, really like in that class is Forney running back Javian Osborne. I think that he is a very talented runner. I think that Texas is one of the schools that was in very early for him. I think that he fits within that offensive system very well. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping my close eye on in that 2026 cycle. And then you also have Tredarian Ball at Texas High. And I've made really both of these guys are Reggie Bush-esque type of running backs, multifunctional and very versatile out of the backfield, can catch the rock very efficiently. So they're, dual threats out of the backfield, so to speak. And it'll be interesting to see how they pair with the guys that they're bringing in the 2025 class, how they would fit in potentially there at Texas. But I really like the running back class in 2026. But just like kind of going down that list, there are going to be plenty of names that pop up as we dive into the evaluation process and really find out more about these players like Fort Bend Marshall safety Isaiah Williams. This dude is one of the best defensive backs in the entire country. He took a recent unofficial visit to Texas, and I would explain his game as like he can cover, but he's a thumper. Like he's a guy who loves to come downhill and blow up, ball carriers and make tackles. And I think that Isaiah Williams is one of those names that Texas fans are going to be plenty familiar with by the time he makes his decision, because they had a tremendous defensive back class in 2024. So when you're looking at 2025, it's those recruits in 2025 are going to be looking at that roster and say, oh, Kobe Black, Xavier
100%.
Filsamy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, maybe I should go somewhere else. Maybe the competition's too stiff. So I think 2026 is going to be a big defensive back year, and Isaiah Williams is the guy that I have at the top of my board there.
I think it's pretty safe to say that Texas is pretty good at this recruiting thing. I think they're going to be in good hands for a while now.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. Like, buckle up.
Oh, yeah.
The next couple of weeks are going to be interesting because I counted up, before we kind of came on the air here, there was going to be like 8 top-tier receivers visiting. over the next couple weeks, and I think like that is the biggest question in the class of 2025. I know that they probably want to add 3 receivers in this class at least, especially with the talent that's on the board. Which of those receivers fit into this class? Which ones do they hit home runs with? Is it going to be Corey Moore and Andrew Marsh and Khalil Lockett, or is Michael Terry a wide receiver for them, and does he take one of those spots? Tanuk Hines just took his official visit there, and he's a prospect that's really shooting up recruiting charts. He picked up a recent offer from Georgia. So, I mean, like, there's really, really talented players available at the wide receiver position, and which ones are going to make up the Texas class? That's, I think, the question that is most pressing, and the one that fans are going to be excited to find out that answer. Answer for.
Well, and fans like those splash players too, right? So I think I agree with you there. The wide receiver position, I think, for Texas is super important this year, especially because they lost so much of the NFL draft, and they're kind of rebuilding with bringing in these transfers like Isaiah Bond, like we mentioned earlier. But I think no matter what, they're probably in really good hands. So if you're a Texas Longhorns fan, be excited.
Yeah, they're all like 5 stars.
I know. It's like, which 5-star do we want this week?
Which are we going to get? That's why it's fun.
I know. It's super, super fun. He's Greg Powers. You can see all of his fine work at texasfootball.com/recruiting. Thanks, Powers. This was fun.
Appreciate
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again next week. Maybe we'll talk about a different team.
I like it. Thanks to Greg Powers, the director of recruiting here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, for taking the time to sit down with me yesterday and talk all about Texas Longhorns recruiting, because, man, like we said in that video, like they're booming right now. It is a good time to be a Texas Longhorns fan, moving to the SEC, basically getting their pick of the litter right now. So thanks to Greg Powers for making his first ever appearance on Women Talking Football. So, Powers, if you're watching, we love you.
Go Grev.
You can follow him on Twitter at GPowersScout. See all of his fine work at texasfootball.com. Well, I think that'll do it for us.
Yeah.
That was a fun episode. And if this is the first time you tuned into us, we appreciate it, and we hope that you stick around. We're Women Talking Football. We love to talk football. We love to talk X's and O's, but we also love to bring light to women's sports in general. So if you've got any topic ideas, if you have any segment ideas for us, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear your feedback. What do you like? What do you don't like? Who do you want to see on our podcast? Guest ideas. We're all about that stuff. So please, reach out to us on Twitter at Mallory Hartley, at Ashley_Pickle12. I know that so well by now. Your Twitter profile.
And the other thing that I want to point out too, just real fast before we go, is obviously if there are any younger women in your life that whether that be a daughter or a niece or just a friend of a friend, a friend's kids, whatever, that is interested in football and stuff like that, let us know, man. We'd love to sit down and have a conversation with them and kind of talk about, how we got to be here, how we made this happen, and that kind of stuff. We love when younger girls come up and ask questions, because that's what we did when we were that age, like, how do I get to be Erin Andrews? How do I get to be Samantha Ponder? I'm still asking those questions, and here we are. Any girls that want some advice on, colleges and how to turn this fun thing into a job. Like, we're getting paid to do this right now, and I'm sitting with my 2 best friends talking football. Like, that's ridiculous. I know. So yeah, any sort of mentorship we can give back to people, or if y'all want to come bring someone up here to watch the show live, let us know. Yeah, and we're gonna create our very own sports bar, so you can come. Yeah, sports bar coming soon. Yeah, WTF Sports Bar. Soon is we got to talk about the powers in charge, though. So I'm sure that they will just love it when we say, "Hey, hear me out." Bar. Yeah, they love that stuff. They love to promote us. So if you're listening, say a prayer Adam. For our hopes. Also, happy birthday, Adam. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Adam. We love you, Adam. We hope you're having a good time on vacation right now. Can we open up a sports bar? Can we open up a sports bar? Let's cut this to him and send it to him for his birthday. Perfect. This is your birthday present, Adam. We want to open a sports bar. For you. And for you. And me too. And you. And Vinay. Correct. And the whole Dave Campbell staff. Anyways, that'll do it for us. If you like what you hear, if you miss us, though, live on Wednesdays at noon, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Spotify. Only. Apple Podcasts. Spotify. No Spotify. Always Spotify. We're an Apple stand here. But yeah, with that being said, we'll see you next Wednesday at 12 p.m.